Hey everybody, welcome to the ninth episode of PeopleSoft interview series by PeopleSoft channel. And we are back with another episode on application engine interview questions. So the topic for today is state records. State record is one of the most important concept used in application engines, and these are some of the frequently asked interview questions about state records. So, in this episode, we will understand all of these questions and their answers. And at the end, we will go with a live demo in which we will create an application engine program from scratch, use a state record, and discuss all of these concepts. So, without further delay, let's start with state records. The first question is, what is state record in AEB? So, to understand the concept of state records, let's consider an application engine in which we have two actions. Let's say action 1 is a SQL action which is running a select statement and getting some values from the database. Let's say it is getting employee ID as 55. And then action 2 is a PeopleCode action which wants to print the employee ID 55 in the out. So for this to happen, action 1 needs to pass this value to action 2. However, there is no direct way in which action 1 can pass any value to action 2. That means whenever we want to pass data between two different actions in application engine program, there is no direct way to pass the values. Hence, to solve this problem or to make this happen, we have a concept of state record. State record is kind of a data buffer, a temporary data buffer you can think of, which is available whenever an application engine is running. So, once we set up this state record, a data buffer is created, and then we can select what are the fields which would be part of the data buffer. Let's say we create a record which is the state record and assign employee ID as a field. In this case, this problem can be solved by action 1 passing this employee ID 55 value to the state record, and then action 2 can get this value from state record and then print using the PeopleCode message box functionality. This is the purpose of state records. State records are simply used to pass values between two actions. The next question is, which record types can be used as a state record? So when it comes to types of state record in an application engine program, there are two types of records which can be used as a state record. The first one is a SQL table, and the second one is a derive or work record. So let's understand why PeopleSoft has provided these two different types of records to be used as a state record. To understand these concepts, let's understand what is the difference between these two records type. First one is a SQL table. That means it stores the value into database. Versus second one is a derived work record, that is like a temporary value. So it is able to hold the value till the time you're running the application. In this case, it will be able to hold the value till your application engine program is running. And once your application engine program is completed, it will no longer hold the value. That is not the case with SQL table. It can still hold values into database. So how to decide that whether to use SQL table as a state record or whether to use derived work record as a state record? So if you are creating an application engine program which needs restart functionality because it is processing huge rows of data, then we should go with SQL table. Because let's say your application engine is processing 50,000 rows of data and it fails somehow by processing the row number 30,000. So we need the ability to restart the application engine program so that it will start executing right from the row it had filled. And how we would know? We would have our SQL table as a state record, which will still hold the value even though the application engine has failed. So that is why whenever we have a requirement to create restartable application engine programs, go with SQL table state record. Versus if we do not have that requirement to create restartable application engine programs, and if we are creating some simple application engine programs like we discussed, where action 1 is getting employee ID 55 and action 2 people code action is just printing that 55. So for such simpler applications, we can definitely go with derive work record as a state record. The next two questions are regarding setting and getting values to and from state record using PeopleCode and SQL. How to set state record values using SQL and PeopleCode, and how to fetch state record value from SQL and PeopleCode. So when it comes to state record, there are four common scenarios that we have observed. The first one is a SQL action, and it needs to store some value into state record fields. The second one is that it is a SQL action and it needs to get some value from the state record field. Similarly, we have people code action and it needs to store some value to state record fields. And similarly, we have a people code action and it needs to get some value from state record fields. So these are the four common scenarios while working with state record. Let's understand the first scenario. Let's say you are running some select statement and it is returning an employee ID and you want to store that employee ID value into state record. We can do that by using the meta select statement called as %select. So what will happen is that the employee ID which is written by this select statement will be stored into the employee ID from the state record. So this employee ID is part of the state record. In case we have multiple fields, for example, we want to store employee ID and employee name, we can separate the fields by using comma. So the updated statement will be %select employee ID, comma employee name, and then the actual select statement, which will be select employee ID, employee name from the employee table. Second scenario is how to get value from state record and use those in our SQL statement. So to do that, we can use %bind meta SQL. Let's say we run this statement, select employee name from table where employee ID is equal to %bind. So if the state record has employee ID is equal to 55, that will be dynamically passed here and the select statement will run for employee ID is equal to 55. So this is how we can pass a value from state record the SQL statement. The third scenario is how to set state record values using a PeopleCode statement. We can communicate with the state record fields using the format state record dot field dot value. For example, in this PeopleCode snippet, we have a variable employee ID storing the employee ID value. And let's say we want to set the state record employee ID field is equal to this employee ID. We can do this by using the record name, which is state_record.ed dot field name, which is the employee ID dot value is equal to our required value. Similarly, let's say we need the state record field value in our PeopleCode. We can do that using the same way. So in this case, let's say we want that employee ID from the state record to store in the employee ID PeopleCode variable. We can do that by using the PeopleCode variable int equal to your state record name dot your field name in the state record dot value. So this is how we can communicate with state record fields using PeopleCode. The next question is How many state records can be there in an application engine program? So as per people books, we can have up to 200 state records associated with a particular application engine program. However, out of these 200 state records, there can only be one default state record. Now, what is the difference between a default state record and the remaining 199 non-default state records? Well, the difference lies in terms of accessing the value. For example, you're accessing the state record in a people code or in SQL Action. So if your state record is a default state record, you can directly use the format fieldname.value for your people code or just field name in your state record, and that will work. However, if your state record is not the default state record, then we need to use the complete format as we discussed. For example, consider this select statement in which we are setting the state record field employee ID. So, since we have not mentioned the record name of this state record, the application engine assumes that this is for the default state record, and hence it will update the employee ID of the default state record. So this is how it works for default state record. You do not need to provide the record name. However, let's say you want to set employee ID in a non-default state record. In that case, you need to mention the record name dot field name. The next question is, how many rows can a state record hold at any time? So, state record can hold only one row of data at any given time. So you can think of it like a level 0 data in a PeopleSoft page. So when we open any PeopleSoft page, it has a level 0 and it stores only one transaction or one row of data at any point. Now it's time for a demo. So let's create an application engine program from scratch and let's understand how state record works. So let's create a new application engine program. Click on File, New and select App Engine Program. So let's understand what is the purpose or what will this application program do. So we have this employee table called as PCEMP table, and this table holds employee information such as employee ID, name and their current salary and designation. Now, based upon this information, we want to calculate their salary hike percentage and update this table for this value. And based upon the hike percentage, we also want to calculate their revised salary. So we need to write an application engine program which will perform this task, and based upon their designation. For example, a trainee might get 15% salary hike, whereas a manager might get 10% salary hike. So based upon this logic, we need to update their revised salary, and in the message section of the application engine program, we also need to include their hike percentage. For example, this employee will get 15% salary hike, like this. So this is our problem statement. So let's create an application engine program for this requirement. Coming back to application engine, I have saved the application engine as state underscore demo underscore E. Now let's add our first action and let's make it as a do select action because we are interested to process row by row transactions. Inside this do select, we are querying the employee table and we are getting employee ID, employee name and designation. Now, we want to write a logic that based upon the designation of an employee, whether he is a manager or a trainee or a team lead, his hike percentage will be decided. And we also want to display in the message log the employee name along with their hike percentage. For that, we will need a PeopleCode action. So let's add another action and let's say it as a PeopleCode action. Now we are getting the employee information from this action and we need to use those employee ID, employee name designation into PeopleCode. That means we have to pass data from doSelect to PeopleCode. Hence, we would require a state record. So let's create a state record for our application engine. So let's click on File, New and select Record. Now, this is our main table, which is the employee table. So let's include employee ID, employee name, salary hike percentage, and employee designation from the main table into state record. The record type will be derived work record. Let's save this record. Now, when it comes to creating a state record, one important rule is that your record name must end with underscore AET. Only then you will be able to use it as a state record. If you do not give the record name ending with underscore AET, then you won't find that record to be used as a state record. Click on OK. So let's add this record as a state record to our application engine. This is our application engine. Let's go to Properties, State Records, search for our state record name. So this is our record name. So if your record does not end with underscore AET, then you won't be able to find that record in this list. So select the record, click on Add. And as you can see, this time the default state record checkbox is checked because we only have one state record at the moment. Hence, this checkbox is checked. Click on OK and save the application engine. Now we need to make changes in the first action to select, and we need to include these three fields into our state record fields. So let's write %select, and this is the updated SQL. So with the help of %select, whatever information, whatever field values will be written from SQL, those will be copied into these state record fields. So let's save the changes. And now let's register our application engine program to make sure the application is running fine till this point, and also see what is happening with the state records. So to register the application engine, click on Navigator, PeopleTools, Process Scheduler, Processes. Add a new value. The process type will be application engine and the process name will be same as our application engine name. In the process definition option, let's provide a common component and let's provide the process group as all pages. Click on save and in the override options, let's enable trace because trace will help us to check what are the current state record values assigned. Click on save. Now it's time to run our application engine program. To run the application engine program, let's click on System Process Request. Click on Run and let us find our application engine program. This is the required application engine. Click on OK. Let's go to Process Monitor and wait for the application engine program to complete. The application engine has failed, so let's check the message logs. And as you can see, the error is error retrieving the application engine main step 1 people code. And this happened because we did not provide any people code inside this action. So I have added this sample message box so that the people code action will run. Let's click on save and then let's restart the application engine. So the application engine is successful. Let's go to details. In the message log, we can see this particular message 6 times because we have 6 employees. And for each employee, we got this message because we are using the doSelect action. Now, let's see what is happening with the state record tree. Let's go to view log trace and check this trace file. And as you can see, we have this doSelect action executed 6 times. Now, how do we see what is happening with the state record trees? Remember, we discussed that state record is nothing but application engine's data buffers. So if you see, we have this buffers. This is nothing but the state record fields. And because we included 3 fields as part of the state record, we can see the value of these 3 fields here. So the first value is employee ID, second value is employee name, and third value is employee designation. This was for the first iteration. As you can see, we are running doSelect, and this was for the first iteration. This was our first employee, Kevin Joy. Now, similarly, for the second iteration, we received employee information for Patricia Williams, and Patricia Williams has been the second employee in this table. Similarly, we can see what is happening with the state record. So this confirms that the state record fields that we requested to assign are working fine. Let's use the PeopleCode action to write logic to calculate hike percentage. Let's remove this sample message. And this is our PeopleCode program. So we are taking a hike percentage variable and initializing it to 0. So from the previous doSelect, we have the employee designations stored into the state records. So we are using the evaluate function, and the format we are using to access state record values are state record dot field name dot value. So the logic we are giving is that if the designation is associate, let's say hike percentage is 15, for manager it is 9, for trainee 12, and for technical lead it is 11. And then we are updating the hike percentage in the state record to the hike percentage which we are calculating based upon the evaluate function. And we are also using PeopleCode to display that this employee state record.employee ID and with the employee name will get this many hike percentage. So let's save this and let us rerun the application engine program. Let's wait for the program to complete. Program is successful. Let's check the message log. And we can see we have received the required information that this employee name will get 12% of Y. Similarly, for all the employee, we receive the required messages. Now we are left with the final step, which is updating the hike percentage of the employee in the SQL table, and then updating the revised salary based upon the hike percentage and current salary for all of these employees. So let's go back to application engine and let's add a new SQL action. This will be SQL because we will make the updates using SQL actions, and because we have the employees calculated hike percentage present in the state record field. So we will use that information and we will bind it to our SQL to perform the updates on the employee table. So this is our required SQL, and we are executing an update on the employee table, and we are setting the salary hike percentage is equal to bind. This is our state record, and this is the hike percentage free from the state record. So with the help of PeopleCode, we calculated the hike percentage and stored into state record. And now we are using the bind function to assign these calculated fields to access them and then updating it as a salary hike percentage into your employee table. Similarly, we are calculating the revised salary. So the revised salary will be your current salary plus hike. So the statement will be revised salary equal to your salary, which is your current salary, plus salary into the hike percentage. Again, we are using the bind statement. And finally, we are using employee ID is equal to bind current employee. So why this? Because we are using the do select statement. So each time for each iteration, the data buffer, the state record will have one single employee ID present. So that ID will be passed here as an employee ID. So similar to do select, this action will be executing 6 times because do select is creating 6 iterations of people code and 6 iterations of this SQL action. So let's save the changes and run the application engine one more time. Let's wait for the program to complete. The program is successful. Let's go to detail, message log, and we can see the people code from the previous actions. And now let's query the employee table. As we can see, we have successfully updated the salary hike percentage as well as the revised salaries for all the employee. So this is how we can create application engine program, and this is how state record can be helpful to write a logic which is distributed across multiple actions, and then state record can be used to pass the value from one action to another action. So that's it guys for today's episode. If you found this explanation helpful, then please like this video. And if you are interested into such content, then please subscribe to PeopleSoft channel. Thank you.